Hello everybody, today I'm going to be filming my April reading wrap up. I am a bit sick right now, so if my voice sounds a bit strange, I've been battling through some sort of a cold. I've got like a really bad sore throat and runny nose and a cough and headaches and like all that wonderful stuff. So I'm kind of still on the mend, but I did want to get this up because I haven't posted a video in a little while, and with wrap ups I try to get them out as close to the beginning of the month as possible. April was a pretty good reading month for me. It wasn't like one of my absolute best, but honestly, considering that I am now working full-time and I'm doing so much more in my life than I used to, like activity-wise, I'm still very proud of myself and I think I did well. So let's get on into the books. The first book that I finally read is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This has been on my TBR shelf for, like 6 or 7 months now, and it's one of those that I've wanted to pick up for a really long time, and I knew that I was gonna like it, but you kind of know how things go when you have like a stack of books that you need to read. Certain things interest you at the time more than others, and this is also a bit of a commitment. Like, it is a pretty large book, like in terms of actual height, so you have like really long pages to get through, and it's got a good kind of thickness to it as well. So I knew that if I read this, it was going to be a bit of a commitment and that it wasn't going to be something I was going to like fly through super fast. I did get through this though surprisingly fast. I think that's just because it is such a amazing story. As I'm sure most of you know, this is centering around a heist. We have a cast of 6 different characters, and it's set in a fantasy world, the Grishaverse, which follows along with Leigh Bardugo's other series, which is I think like Daughter of Smoke and Bone, something like that. I haven't read those yet, and so certain things within the Grishaverse I really did have to like learn and didn't completely like click from the beginning. But overall, considering that I've never read another Bardugo novel, I was able to get into this pretty quickly. I gave it a 4.5 stars just because the beginning was a little bit slow for me, but like once I was in this, like I was in. I absolutely loved these characters, especially Jesper and Inej. They were like my absolute favorites. And overall, I'm really looking forward to reading the second book, but I'm kind of waiting because I'm really sad that this is only a duology, because I really like this. Like, this is something that I would easily read like a 6-book series about, because I just really like love these characters and I love this world and what's going on so much. Definitely do plan on reading the second one. This was fantastic. I think it's totally deserving of all the hype it gets. If you're someone that likes fantasy, like there's no way you're not gonna like this. It's a fantastically written novel, very atmospheric, and I would highly recommend. The next book I read is The Vegetarian by Han Kang, I think is how you pronounce that. This was one of the 10 best books from the New York Times book review. Also the winner of the Man Booker International Prize, so it's got a lot of stuff going for it. This is such an interesting, like, different book. It's got like this thriller mystery element to it, but it's also just really dark and creepy, and that like is so up my alley. Anything that's kind of dark and unsettling and kind of a little bit of like a thriller mystery twist in there. I mean, I don't think that I could like put together a better genre for myself, but this I ended up giving this 5 stars. It's short. It's something that I highly recommend, like on a, like rainy evening or afternoon, or just if you have the time to just sit down with this and like a cup of tea and just go through it all at once. I think that would be the best way to do this, because there's something about the atmosphere and the overall tone of this writing that's just very unsettling, but in like the best way, like that creepy, crawly, like ugh kind of way. To kind of wrap this up, it's about a woman who starts having these nightmares, and so she decides to be a vegetarian. More so decides to go vegan, but in the culture that this is set in, it's very like taboo, like this is not what you do. So her entire like family kind of turns against her for this one life choice, and we start to kind of piece together like, what are these nightmares about? Like, these really like creepy imagery and this weird stuff that's happening. Like, how does this all kind of tie in? And it deals a lot with mental illness, and there's a lot of stuff that this book just kind of tackles in a really interesting and very different way. I think that if you are a fan of, a mystery thriller kind of genre and you like those kind of creepy books, this is something that you will definitely enjoy. It's told in 3 parts, each from a different perspective, and the story is just interesting. Like, it's one of those that as soon as you pick it up, you're going to be invested. You're going to want to know what happens. You're going to want to keep going along with it. And I think it's totally deserving, again, of the praise and of all the awards that it has received. It's one of those books that I've never really read a book like this, and I don't know if I ever will. Next, I read Mosquito Land by David Arnold, and this was so good. I gave this a 5-star rating because this just connected with me so much. It's about a girl named Mim who is a child of divorced parents, and she ends up being forced to go live with her dad and then her new stepmom, which the relationship there is obviously very strained. And she finds out that her mom is sick, and so she decides to, you know, jump onto a Greyhound bus and to take a trip to go visit her mom. And it's just about that journey the entire way, the different people that she meets, the different experiences that she goes through. And it's kind of this, you know, really like, you know, again, a journey, a self-discovery kind of novel within this kind of young adult genre. If you're a fan of John Green books, like, you're gonna love this. It's got that, you know, that kind of like quirky, smart, fun character. From some of the reviews that I read on Goodreads, some people didn't find that this character was like really relatable for her age. I think, again, she's like 16, but you know, she's like brilliant and super profound, and everything that she writes is like a literary masterpiece. And you know, again, she's a very like John Green kind of character. And while sometimes I don't find those to be the most realistic, there's still characters that I personally relate to a lot, and so I really like those kinds of characters. And the story was just so great. Like, it's one of those books that literally had me laughing out loud at some parts, and then I was like crying and bursting into tears into others, because it was so just emotional and it was so raw, and I really, really loved this character, and I loved what she was going through, and I loved the different side characters that we met along the way. It was just such a fun book. Like, now thinking about it and kind of reminiscing on my reading time with this, I wish that I could go back and like reread it for the first time all over again, because it truly was just a happy, I mean, the content was kind of sad, but overall the feelings and just the emotions, and especially the ending and the way it wrapped up, it just is one of those books that you just feel a lot while reading, and I absolutely loved it. Really, really good young adult contemporary novel. If that is a read that you are looking for, or something that you really enjoy, I would highly recommend picking this up if you haven't, because I think that it just, you know, it does that sort of book really well. Next, I read I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. So this story starts with a mom and her son walking across the street. I think the boy is like 6 years old, and he ends up being hit and killed by a vehicle that ends up pulling a hit and run and ends up just driving off. And so that's kind of like the main premise for a story. And then from there, we follow a couple different perspectives, including a detective who is trying to, you know, solve this kind of cold case at this point because there were no witnesses. The mom couldn't, you know, recognize a license plate, a car, or anything, because it was just such a fast, you know, horrific event that happened. And we also follow, you know, some other perspectives as well throughout this novel. And oh my god, like, you know those books that you read and you're just like going through and you're like, what the fuck? What the hell? What's going on? Like, you like literally your mind can't even like process what you're reading. This, to me, at some points was like that. The beginning, I don't want to say it's slow, because it's not, but it's just very like, you know, it's kind of introductory. And you're starting to learn a little bit more about these characters and their lives, and a little bit more of that personal backstory. But once you kind of get into the meat of it and you really start to figure out like who did what, and you know, how all these characters kind of fit together and everything, it really is kind of one of those like mindfuck novels, and I absolutely loved it. Like, such a great mystery thriller. I also really liked that it didn't really involve just like one big twist. I mean, there kind of was one big twist, but there were also like a lot of other twists that I think were just as equally captivating and had me, you know, reeling after I was done reading them. And so I think that that's always really interesting in kind of a thriller novel, when we got like a couple of different things going on. And overall, I think I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars, because again, the beginning of the novel is a little bit slow, especially comparatively to like, you know, the second and then the final act of the novel. But overall, it is fantastic, and I could not recommend this more to my thriller and mystery junkies out there if you have not read this yet. I know it's very popular, so I'm sure many of you are familiar with this, but such a fantastic read, and really, really enjoyed this one. Overall, it was just like a good reading month for me. Like, I'm looking at this now, I'm like, everything was like a 5 or 4.5 star read, which is awesome, because like earlier this year, was it like March or February? I think it was March. I was not having this much success. Very finally, I'm just gonna like briefly touch on this. I power reread / kind of skimmed A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas in preparation for A Court of Wings and Ruin. I did it in like 48 hours, and you know, some of the parts, I'm not gonna lie, like I kind of skipped over. I was really just looking for, you know, the main like meat of the story, and of course like the lovely Feyre and Rhys scenes. But mostly I was just trying to, you know, kind of put myself back into this world and get myself prepared and ready for the third and final book. I mean, I know it's not like final within the world, but it's final within the whole like Feyre storyline, which I love. Like, I can't even begin to describe how much I love these novels. I am not a person that rereads books. I used to be, like, and I think back when I was like a kid and in middle school and stuff, especially when I went through like my Twilight phase and all those, you know, wonderful times. I used to reread books all the time because I would fall in love so much with characters and with storylines that I just wanted to keep rereading, even the same story, because I was just so interested and I wanted to pick apart every single little detail. And as I've gotten older, that sort of like obsessive nature of me, while I still have it in other parts of my life, in my reading life, I just don't feel that as strongly as I used to. But this is a novel that I think for me, like why it touched me so much and why I have such a strong connection with it, is that it sparked that true love and obsession with stories and characters in me that I just haven't experienced in a really long time. And so for me to go back and like reread this book was a big deal, and it was even cooler because I met Sarah J. Maas. She ended up doing a book signing event where I live, and so I had this whole plan of talking to her and, you know, giving her this whole speech about like how much her writing and her worlds and everything meant to me, and how last year when I was going through like some really, you know, depressive times, how escaping into the worlds of Feyre or Aelin or whatever really just inspired me and kept me going and kept me happy and would give me something to look forward to at the end of the day. So this whole thing planned, right? I walk up to the table to meet her, and I immediately start bursting out into tears, like full on, like ugly Kim Kardashian crying. And poor Sarah, I'm sure she's just sitting there like, oh my God, this is so awkward, what am I doing? But she was so kind and she was so lovely and honestly so nice and just gorgeous. Oh my God, she's so pretty. But I felt so bad because here I am like awkwardly crying in front of her, and you know those situations when someone's crying in front of you and you don't really know what to do? I felt like I was totally sticking her into one of those, and I felt awful, and I told her, I'm like, oh, I promised myself I wasn't gonna cry, because I truly did. Like, I tried to power talk myself beforehand. I'm like, Kylie, get your shit together. You are not crying in front of like your favorite author of all time. But I mean, when she's like one of your favorite authors of all time, you just burst into tears, and it's just what you do. So it's awesome though, because I got my copy of Aquar signed. I would go grab it, but it's on my nightstand. And so it's signed, it has my name in it. Like, just thinking about it now, it makes me so happy, and I think I could cry right now about it because it was such a surreal, overwhelming, amazing experience. I've never gotten the privilege or the honor of being able to meet a writer of whom I admire and love so much, and it was just incredible. So anyway, that happened. But yeah, those are all the books that I read for the month of April. I was like trying to think back of like, what wrap up am I doing? Because it does not feel right that May is already here. Like, April was non-existent. I know people say this a lot about months, but in particular, you know, I feel like April went by really fast. So I hope you guys had a good reading month or had a good month in general. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of these, what your thoughts are, and I will talk to you in the next one. Bye-bye.